This video isn't advice, it isn't instruction, and it isn't meant to persuade you of anything. It's a collection of quiet observations about attention, perception, and the way people move through the world without noticing most of it. Nothing here needs to be remembered. Nothing needs to be acted on. You can just listen. Most daily behavior feels intentional, but very little of it is actively chosen in the moment. Actions repeat because they have been reinforced, not because they are reconsidered each time they occur. Over time, repetition removes the need for awareness. The behavior continues even when attention is directed elsewhere. This is efficient, but it also makes patterns difficult to notice from within. What feels natural is often simply familiar. The longer a habit persists, the less visible it becomes. Awareness tends to arrive only when a pattern is interrupted, not while it is functioning smoothly. Stability hides structure. Consistency removes the need for explanation. As a result, much of what shapes experience operates quietly, without commentary, correction, or conscious oversight. Familiar environments rarely invite close inspection. When surroundings remain stable, attention shifts elsewhere, prioritizing change over continuity. This is not a failure of awareness, but a strategy for efficiency. Constant evaluation would be exhausting. As familiarity increases, detail fades. Objects, routines, and even people become simplified representations rather than actively perceived realities. Complexity does not disappear, but it becomes compressed. What once required interpretation becomes automatic. This compression allows movement through the world with minimal effort, but it also creates blind spots. The absence of novelty makes stability feel empty, even when it is supporting everything else. What remains unchanged becomes unnoticed, not because it lacks importance, but because it no longer demands attention. Attention does not naturally align with importance. It follows contrast, novelty, and expectation instead. What stands out visually, emotionally, or conceptually is more likely to be noticed than what matters most. This creates a persistent mismatch between significance and awareness. Important processes often operate quietly, without interruption or spectacle. Because they do not demand attention, they are easily overlooked. Meanwhile, minor deviations can feel urgent simply because they interrupt the expected pattern. Attention is pulled toward difference, not value. This bias is efficient for detecting change, but unreliable for assessing meaning. As a result, awareness is shaped less by relevance and more by variation. Certainty often appears before understanding has had time to fully develop. When an explanation feels sufficient, inquiry slows. The mind prefers resolution over ambiguity, because unresolved questions require sustained effort. Once a conclusion is reached, even tentatively, it creates a sense of stability. That stability can feel like accuracy, even when information is incomplete. Over time, explanations become reinforced simply through repetition, not verification. Confidence grows as alternatives fade from consideration. This process is not deliberate. It happens quietly as attention moves on. What feels settled may only be familiar. Understanding can stop evolving long before it is complete. Silence does not remove activity. It removes distraction. When external input decreases, internal patterns become easier to notice. Thoughts that were previously masked by noise gain definition. Repetition becomes visible. Without constant interruption, the structure of experience changes. Time feels different. Attention moves inward, not intentionally, but by default. This shift can feel uncomfortable at first, because it removes the usual reference points. Silence exposes processes that were always present, but rarely observed. It does not add information. It simply allows existing signals to surface without competition. Many systems appear stable because change accumulates gradually. Small adjustments rarely attract attention on their own. Each shift feels insignificant until the combined effect becomes noticeable. By the time disruption is observed, the underlying conditions have often been changing for a long time. Stability is usually assumed until it fails. This creates the illusion of sudden change, even when the process was slow and continuous. Recognition lags behind reality. Awareness arrives late, after patterns have already shifted. Instability is often identified only in retrospect. Expectation shapes perception before awareness begins. What is anticipated influences what is noticed first. Attention moves ahead of experience, filtering information based on prior assumptions. This allows rapid interpretation, but it also narrows perception. Information that fits expectations is absorbed easily. Information that conflicts is often dismissed or delayed. Over time, perception becomes self-reinforcing. Expectations confirm themselves, not because they are accurate, but because they guide attention. This process is efficient, but it is not neutral. It favors consistency over discovery. The mind relies on simplified models to navigate complex environments. These models remove detail, reduce uncertainty, and make prediction possible. They are necessary for function, but they are not complete representations of reality. Over time, models can be mistaken for the thing they describe. When this happens, discrepancies are treated as errors rather than information. Adjustment becomes difficult. Models persist because they work well enough, not because they are accurate in every situation. Understanding becomes constrained by the structure of the model itself. Awareness often arrives after processes are already underway. Sensations, decisions, and reactions can begin before they are consciously noticed. The explanation comes later, once the action has already occurred. This creates the impression of control, even when awareness did not initiate the process. Conscious thought becomes a narrator rather than a director. Experience feels immediate, but it is assembled from events that have already happened. Awareness does not lead as often as it follows. It organizes what has occurred into a coherent story. Time is not experienced uniformly. Periods filled with novelty create more distinct memories, while repetitive periods compress in retrospect. Looking back, routine feels shorter, not because less occurred, but because fewer moments were recorded. Memory favors change over continuity. As a result, time feels uneven when remembered, even if it passed evenly while it occurred. Experience expands in the moment, but contracts afterward when structure is repetitive. Interruption shapes attention more than content. What breaks a pattern is often noticed more than what sustains it. Repetition fades into the background, while deviation stands out. This makes stability easy to overlook. Systems that function smoothly rarely draw attention until they fail. Awareness is often triggered by disruption rather than continuity. As a result, attention becomes reactive instead of observational. The mind cannot hold everything at once. Simplification is necessary. Details are discarded so that movement remains possible. This limitation is not a weakness, but it does shape perception. What is excluded still exists, even if it is not noticed. Models help navigate complexity, but they also define what can be seen. Perception is constrained by what is allowed to enter awareness at all. Continuity creates the impression that experience is smooth and uninterrupted. In reality, perception is assembled from fragments. Gaps are filled automatically, and transitions are softened so movement feels coherent. This process allows the world to feel stable even as attention shifts constantly. Without continuity, experience would feel disjointed and difficult to navigate. The mind works quietly to maintain this sense of flow, even when conditions change. What feels seamless is often carefully constructed. Stability is not the absence of change, but the management of it. That's all. Nothing here needs a conclusion. Nothing needs to be applied. These are just things worth noticing before you scroll.